I also helped pull this exhibition together. For 10 years I worked in an art school, and we used to take kids to art museums and young adults to art museums, sit them down in front of art and talk about what it is we're actually looking at. So I worked in an art school for 10 years. After that, I worked as a community arts development officer, working with kids on big housing estates, running art projects and trying to engage people with art, so that art isn't solely just for these fancy big white museums and incredibly rich people. Art is for everyone. And then after that, I ran a gallery which predominantly promoted street artists and younger artists, working in all different areas, to be fair. But we did have quite a big roster of street artists on our books. For the last 5 years, I've been working with a lot of activists designing actions to overthrow the government. And that in itself is quite a creative job. It involves essentially the same skill set as making art, but with a slightly different intention. So they're typically creative actions. They're generally mostly illegal, and when we talk about the art today, we'll see that some of the same skills are used in that kind of cross pollination of like skill set, basically. Okay, who's ever been in an art gallery and gone, what the fuck is that about?
Yeah, definitely.
Right, okay, cool. This is going to help with that massively. So when we look at art, there's a couple of questions we need to ask ourselves, which are really, really important to help us get a better understanding of what it is we're looking at. And they're really, really, really basic questions. So one is, what's the name of the artist? Simple question. We need to know who they are. Just from their name, that may give us a bit more indication of what country they're from. Okay, so that leads us on to the next question is, when was it made? Okay, so we think about when it was made, and that will give us more of a context about what was happening in the world in that particular year. Another question is, what is it made of? What is it we're actually looking at? Okay, so we'll ask ourselves those 3 questions, and those 3 questions might open up more questions. So basically, the easiest way to start understanding art is to ask yourselves questions. That's it. That's really, really simple. And those questions are really, really quite basic. Most of the art that we've got in here today is like pictorial. It's representational of the real world in some way or another. But the same thing applies if you're looking at like conceptual art or minimalist art or abstract art. You can ask yourself the same questions, and that will help you like derive some kind of meaning from that particular artwork. What's important is that the meaning you derive from that artwork might not necessarily be the same meaning that is intended by the artist. The artist might not even intend a meaning. They might just be making things, right? They might just be making things, and the important bit is you put meaning onto the art that you're looking at. So there's no right or wrong answers to those questions that you're asking yourself, right? There's obviously right or wrong answers about the year, the context, and the materials, but the other questions that arise from looking at that particular artwork, there's no right or wrong answers, okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to have a quick whiz around. There's a couple of bits of artwork in here that I personally find really interesting. So we're going to look at some of those, and I'm going to ask you questions, and we're going to have discussions about some of those bits of artwork, and that will help us get a bit of an understanding of what it is we're actually looking at. Let's look at this one. Does anyone want to have a guess at what that's about?
Well, we were talking about it earlier, and we were discussing the Palestinian issue and the fact that maybe it's depicting the loss of land, or
possibly, yeah. So how did you get to the conclusion it was about Palestine?
well, the colours.
Colours, yeah. So again, that when we were talking at the beginning, we were asking ourselves, what is the artwork made out of? And that's really basic question. Like, is it a sculpture? Is it a painting? What kind of paint is it? What color is it even? And what do those colors mean? So those particular color combinations reminded you obviously of the Palestine flag.
And the melon.
I was
And the
told
melon.
by, somebody that they were banned from carrying watermelons in Palestine
Okay, and why might that be?
because they were banned from putting a flag up and then banned from carrying watermelons because of the colours.
Yes. So essentially, in certain parts of Israel, that particular color combination was banned. So you couldn't walk down the street wearing like red trousers, a white t-shirt, a green top, and a black hat, for example. And then to get around that, the Palestinians started carrying around watermelons because the watermelons naturally had that color. And that was a way around to show that I'm supportive of this particular situation. And again, this links quite nicely to this idea of activism, right? So within, when we're creating like creative actions, quite often we're finding ways around to subvert the law and to find interesting ways to put the state in a dilemma situation. So for us, when we're planning actions, one of the reasons why it's really, really important that most of the actions that activists do are non-violent is that it puts the police in a dilemma situation. If you're sat down peacefully, quietly, just blocking a road, if the police come in and drag you out of that road using violence, then it reflects badly on the police, right? So that's a dilemma situation for the police. So the police need to make a conscious decision as to how they're going to respond to your non-violent action. If they use violence, that potentially encourages others to join the protests who go, you can't use violence on people like that. We're going to join the side of the protesters. So this is a dilemma situation for the authorities, right? If you're carrying around a watermelon, it's ludicrous that someone would be like imprisoned for carrying a watermelon, right? So that's an interesting dilemma situation. So that's where the use of the watermelon comes in. Someone was talking about land use and land being taken away. Yeah. So potentially, but what we need to think about is the context of this exhibition, and that's also important when we ask ourselves questions about what it is we're looking at. So do we know what the theme for this whole exhibition is? Hope, yeah. So, what's happening here? The artist specified which order that they go in here when I put them on the wall, right? When I hung them up. So, when we read an image, quite often we read it in the same way we read a page, right? We'll start at the top corner and look through it. So here we can potentially read this in the same way we would read a book. So maybe we start here. So maybe this is actually more hopeful, right, than actually talking about land being taken away.
But now again, you're reading right.
Yes, very good. So again, it's having an understanding of the context of the wider world, right? So, like, the more you understand about what it is you're looking at, the more you get back from it. So maybe we read it this way, but maybe to someone else they're reading it this way, and it is about the land being taken away.
Yeah, but they don't read down to up.
They don't read down to up again. So it's about deciphering. Again, we're asking ourselves questions, right? We're having a conversation and asking ourselves questions, and we're getting answers from those questions, which help us understand what it is we're actually looking at. So this is an artwork by Bod. What do we think this is about?
Destruction in Gaza.
This isn't part of it. What do we know about this particular artwork?
I know I don't want to do that puzzle.
It looks overwhelming.
Yeah, is it? I don't know what the picture is.
You see a
You're meant
jigsaw
to-
puzzle, you just want
The goals are straight.
Oh, okay, yeah.
There's too many pieces.
So it's
So
Gaza
we know the
Strip.
name of the artist,
Stress.
Yeah,
Too much.
and we know it was made this year.
yeah.
So is it reflecting the fact that those buildings probably not not standing anymore and
Yeah.
just a rubble.
Yeah,
And wanting to put it back together.
yeah,
But it's going to be difficult.
and it's going to be difficult. Yeah, and the nature of this puzzle, it's a little bit annoying because we've had to pack it away at the end of each day because we've had bands in here. But the first day it was out, quite a few people started working on it, and we ended up with like little section this big and a section this big. But they had worked on it collectively. Like one person came in and basically went through and found all the edges.
Yeah.
And then someone else came in and gone, oh yeah, the hard work's done, let's go. And then like other people started coming in and they were like, oh, what are you doing? And they were like, oh, we're doing this puzzle, we're trying to rebuild Gaza. And it was like, oh, okay, cool. And then they started having a conversation about it. So there's no boundaries to this. That it's like out on display. Like this isn't just the artwork. The people who come together to work on it are the artwork. So it's potentially almost like a performance piece. It's engaging. It's a community piece. It's about discussion.
And there's no constant state of it, is it?
There's no
It's gonna be
constant
different
state.
every time
Changes
you
all
look
the
at it.
time. Yeah. So it's purposely a 2,000 piece puzzle because there's a good chance that this puzzle is never ever going to be done this weekend unless you guys start.
The challenge.
So yeah, very, very simple piece of artwork. Really, really beautiful in my opinion. Possibly one of the best things in here.
Yeah.
I think it's genius. We have two artists who are have a really big following. This is one of them. His name is Wankers of the World. His logo is like the News of the World newspaper logo. The other one is Spelling Mistakes Cost Lives, who produces work. His name is Darren Cullen. This is one of his. And they make work about very, very similar subjects. But Darren paints all his and is like adamant that artists should be artists and make handcrafted things. He's really, really massively opposed to AI. To the point where he sent us an email and goes, if you've got any AI in the exhibition, I'm not being part of it. The guy who makes these is an absolute genius with Photoshop, right? He could Photoshop these because his Photoshop skills are ludicrous. But these are AI generated. And I think it's an interesting discussion to have. And I think AI does play a really important part in art. He released these like in the middle of last year, I think. Or might have even been late the year before, can't remember. And they went absolutely nuts on the internet, like millions and millions and millions of views. He also made huge prints of them, and they were all pasted up all over London. So, like, they had a lot of exposure, huge amount of exposure. This series of artworks are called Tories Without Privilege. Okay, so that is a little bit of context. It's pretty simple. It's a really simple idea. I don't think there's much misinterpretation we can do with this.
Who's the one on the top left?
That's Liz Truss behind the bar. Yeah,
Is that one
straight out of EastEnders. But she is team leader, to be fair, at Weatherspoons. So you know she's reached the top in her field.
Step down in a few weeks.
Yeah, probably step down in a few weeks. Yeah,
When I first saw it,
once she's put the company into liquidation.
I was looking at it with a friend, and we both thought they were look-alike people that they'd use. So it's interesting that you say it's AI.
Generally, the quality of the photos is amazing. The only one that lets down for me, I think the light on Lee Anderson's face is not quite right. It pops a little bit too much, but the others just in context look so amazing. I've got no idea. I think he probably generated them on AI and then probably tweaked them in Photoshop.
I think so. I think the lettering on the Hungry and Homeless
Yeah,
has been put on
yeah.
afterwards.
The same with the
And,
Weatherspoon logo.
Weatherspoon
Yeah,
and the
yeah.
Devereux, I
Yeah.
think he's put on afterwards.
Yeah, they're brilliant. So they come from a set of 10. There are 4 others that we didn't have room to put up. But yeah, the other 4 are equally as good. The Jacob Rees-Mogg one as a bin man is brilliant. Cool. Does anyone know about the giveaway? How to spot AI? There's a couple of easy ways to spot AI. Quite often, purely AI generated images will look a bit painterly, like the horse, like in there. When they're generated from photographs, quite often the hands will be the giveaway. So you can see in Boris's, like AI for some reason can't count fingers. Like quite often AI images have like 5, 6 fingers or like, or weird hands. So I think, to be fair, these are all good, except for this one. Like, he's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 fingers and no thumb. So you can see the hands are like blurry where it's grabbing.
But even looking at it, even that one's starting to.
Yeah. So for some reason, there's a really amazing Facebook group called Terrible Art in Charity Shops, right? It's the best Facebook group ever. And quite often in there, people will post images that they found, and one of the standard comments is "hands are difficult," right? Because that's an artist trying to draw hands really difficult.
Because Lee Henderson's missing a finger, isn't he, on his left hand?
Yeah, he's got some weird mashed up, finger there. So that's quite easily the giveaway that they are AI generated. And there's a weird thing going on here. Look, with the supermarket trolley.